Hello everybody, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to the Wine with Jimmy YouTube channel and e-learning portal. So thank you so much for stopping by. This is a short presentation on a WSET Level 4 Diploma section, and this is on the wine production unit. And this is looking at vine propagation. This will be split into two parts, and the first part is available as free content on YouTube. The second part will be available only on the winewithjimmy.com e-learning portal. You can go across to that website and have a look at everything we have to offer there to support you in your studies for the certificates such as the WSET. If you do have any comments, questions, or concerns, please do pop them in the comments section of the YouTube video, or get in touch via social media that you'll see at the bottom of every slide, or you can get in touch via the e-learning portal. And please remember, if you haven't done already, please subscribe, as you'll get all of the updates of the videos that come through 2 times a week. Okay, so we're going to look at vine propagation. So what preceded this was talking around the anatomy of the vine, so identifying all the key parts of the vine above and below ground. And now we're going to look about vine propagation. So this is everything around actually reproducing these different types of vines through cuttings and layerings, talking about clonal diversity, and also a little bit around nurseries as well on this section. Okay, so without further ado, I think we should begin. So first of all, let's just talk a little bit about the 2 major methods really of vine propagation. And in modern viticulture today, it is these 2 ways which dominates, and that is cuttings and layerings. Okay, so first up, we're going to talk about cuttings. So a cutting is, and if you're into horticulture or botany, you'll know this very well, but a cutting is a section for us of a vine shoot, often between 2 nodes. So that's 2 internodal sectional points. So that's between, it's going to have 1, 2, 3 buds within that, prompt buds, that is planted, and it will grow as a new plant. The picture that I'm showing you here is actually a rooted cutting. So you'll see the cutting is just here. Let me get my pointer. Here we go. Here's the cutting. And then you've got some roots which are being established. And that's actually been placed in a rooting chamber, this one. And it's done actually through sort of spring and summertime, this one. But the more common form of cuttings is actually done as dormant cuttings. And this is done in nurseries usually, and done during the time after the harvest. So when the leaves fall off the vine, but before, of course, bud burst. So this is during our winter months, of course. So this is by far, so cutting as a general terminology is by far the most common propagation technique, as many, of course, many small cuttings can be taken from a vine and propagated at the same time. And this is something with a little bit of research and a bit of study is very, very achievable in your garden, in horticulture, and for some vines, maybe if you want to grab some cuttings of vines with people's permission to put into your own back garden, for instance. It also permits the use of rootstocks, which it can be grafted onto, and that's before it's planted. So the cutting will be taken and eventually grafted and then placed in a series of stages in a nursery, such as nursery blocks, mother blocks, etc. And also, if it is traded through a nursery, today nurseries are very regulated, and they do they are very keen to eradicate any issues with things like disease and the spread of disease through vines. In some places in the world where this hasn't happened in the past, rootstocks were traded almost in the black market, and issues arise from that, as a lot of the vine cuttings were virused and spreaded problems with things like red blotch, for instance, and leaf roll, and all of those. So that's a real reason why nurseries should be used. Okay, the other way then is by talking about layering. So let's just get our layering slide up. So here is some layering in action. And whereas cutting is, it can be done in situ, but it's more commonly done in a nursery. And of course, it is then purchased by the vineyard manager or whoever it may be. Layering is done in situ, and it's often done to really sort of fill in gaps, maybe where vines have passed away. So it's a method of filling those gaps by using shoots from an established neighboring vine to produce, of course, a new vine. The cane is bent down, and a section of that cane at the end is buried in the ground. So here you'll see the mother vine on the left-hand side, and a cane here has been bent down, and this is going to be in sort of springtime, when there is some nice sap within the stem structure. So you have flexibility, of course, of the cane, and that's bent down. And as you can see, it's been buried down here, and eventually the section that it's buried, which is down here, will take root. And once these roots have become established, the cane that links it to the new growth from the mother vine can be cut. Now, there's a bit of debate about this. In the diploma texts, it says it will be cut, but I've often seen many vines which are still connected to the mother vine, as it needs the support of it in its very early stages. And I've had discussions with friends and saying, well, it's actually kept like this. So you've got kind of two plants almost together, but as one. So it's interesting. So it's a bit of a topic that potentially you'll need to do a little bit more research on if you really wanted to find the answer for it. The new vine will grow on its own roots, of course, and not of those of a root stock. So this method, therefore, is not always suitable, because you are requiring maybe the specific capabilities of a typical rootstock or a specialist rootstock. The new vine will have no protection also against phylloxera, or it will have none of the qualities, of course, of that chosen rootstock. So it's not always something that's completely desired due to this fact. Okay, so that is layering. Now, these two methods of cutting and layering of plants, of all plants, are usually genetically identical, of course, because you are propagating the same vine. So it's going to be identical to the parent plant and therefore have the same characteristics. It's important to understand that viticulture, it is not propagated through seeds. So for mass modern viticulture, we don't propagate through seeds. It's through cuttings and layerings. Now, of course, there are some new species of vines which are propagated through seeds, but that is the creation of new varieties. But we are talking really about the layout, the mass rollout of vines is not through seeds, for instance. So vines that grow through seeds also are not genetically identical to the parent vine, although they can have similar characteristics to the parents, but they also can be notably different as well. Okay, so I've got a picture of some sheep which are identical, and thus tipping the hat to, I think it was Dolly the sheep, with the clonal research that went behind that. And then just a little bit on clonal diversity. Now, this is a very simple diagram of cell division, a plant cell division. So I'm just put it up here really so you've got something to look at. But it really is showing a plant cell which the nucleus is dividing into two parts, and two daughter cells are formed. So this is where we're gaining some cell division. So why are we talking about cell division? So as the plant grows, of course, it grows and cells are divided. And those cell division every time it divides, it's not exactly going to be exactly the same. There is risk of mutation through cell division, and that mutation is within the genetic code. And you may get differences, you may not. So many of the mutations have no effect, but some may, where you have things like smaller versus larger grapes, thicker or thinner grape skins, more or less disease resistance, and the stories go on. So it's important to understand that there will be clonal diversity, and that's when somebody starts to talk to you saying, well, I've got Dijon clones, and I've got the number 115, I've got the 114, or I've got the UCD 777, or whatever it may be. So all of those, it sounds a little bit counterintuitive to start with. We've got clones, right? They all should be the same, but there are mutations within all of these, and that's why there are differences. And certainly with grapes that have been around for quite some time. So that's clonal diversity. So that cell division and potential mutation is what causes diversity within the vines of the same grape variety. And then talking a little bit about clonal selection. So vines that have very good characteristics which are desired are selected by vine nurseries. So they work very closely with grape growers and landowners around where they come from. And the propagation by cuttings will occur to grow new vines with these favorable characteristics. And of course, there's often going to be demands for these. Certainly when they know their local areas, they know that they need vines that is maybe combating drought, or maybe there's a waterlogging of water, acidities of the soils, and so on and so on. This is what we call clonal selection. We are not talking about massal selection. That will come in part 2, but this is clonal selection. And there is a slight difference with each of those vines, and we call them clones. Okay, so that's where we have all the different numbers and codes that come into play. A great example of this clonal difference is, of course, Pinot Noir, like I mentioned. Pinot Noir often is cited to be a grape variety which has big clonal diversity and mutations due to the fact that it's just an inherent characteristic of the species. It's not correct. In fact, Pinot Noir is really so clonally diverse due to really the length of time it's been in production. And of course, it has hundreds, if not millennia of years behind it. And that's where all of that clonal diversity comes from. And potentially we notice it a bit more because it's such a delicate but gorgeous wine. So maybe we notice those differences a little bit more in the clonal selection as well. So due to its age, lots of clones of Pinot Noir, lots of numbers up there on this picture. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. So there's quite a famous Dijon clone, or rather a Burgundy clone, which is 115, which is your top right. You'll see smaller compact bunches there. Originally from Domaine Ponceau in Maurice-Saint-Denis, the 115. This was in the early 70s when these were classified, these clones, and led to the original classification of 111 through to 115, and you've got 114 down at the bottom there, which is within that original classification. The 115 clone has small grapes, like I mentioned, making it very highly suited and desired for quality red wine production. The 115. By comparison, we have another grouping of clones, like all the late numbers. We have 521, we have 743, 779, 792, 870, 872, 927. I think in your text it only mentions 521. These are higher yields, all of the ones I've just mentioned, of bigger grapes. They are therefore more suited to other selections, maybe more delicate red wines, but more often sparkling wine production. Remember, Pinot Noir is a significant grape variety in the production of traditional method sparkling wine. So these larger grapes, of course, are not going to have as much tannic structure in the skins, and they are going to have less color, which are not needed. Tannins and color are not needed in that instance for sparkling wine production. So those are, of course, desired for that production. So clonal selection here, and that's an example for you. And in the extreme cases, of course, certain grapes can mutate fully into other grape varieties. So it can be so significant that you have a new species. And of course, the Pinot family has Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Meunier, debatable, of course, and others. But yes, there are families in there which are mutated and quite famous, really. The Pinot group are all mutations of the Pinot family. And then we're moving on to just talking around vine nurseries that I've mentioned already. The first slide we had on the presentation, which was the holding slide, which was of this same place, the Bosman Adama nursery, which is found near Wellington in South Africa, the largest in South Africa, so therefore arguably the most important, and very skilled profession, very great outfit, the Bosman Adama, that I have visited before. So the most common way for a grape grower of obtaining new planting material is to, of course, buy the vines, young vines, from a nursery. And they will have, of course, a certain amount of clones available and on rootstocks as well. And they should be free from virus protection, virus infestation, sorry, so they should be quite protected from that. So you're normally guaranteed healthy rootstocks, healthy vines, and you will have basically a tick list of things of why this is going to be good for your vineyard site. You will work with potentially a vineyard consultant that may actually be somebody from the nursery to help you with your selection of your vine and your rootstock, therefore your clone, for instance. So that's quite important. So there is maybe something to talk about in terms of vine uniformity. So this is the similar vines across the board. I've got a picture here of another great nursery. This is the Rascedo nursery, which is in Friuli Venezia Giulia, which is in the northeast of Italy. And the reason, this is just a picture, I just wanted to put another nursery. They're not famous for vine uniformity or anything like that. I'm talking about nurseries in general here, but depending on the region and the grape variety, potentially only a limited amount of clones would be available from nurseries. And maybe in some instances, the nurseries are focusing on more of a monetary value and maximizing yield over quality. It could be that way. We know that with the capitalist nature of the world. This means that vines planted across a vineyard or even a region can be relatively similar, relatively uniform. And that's specifically classic in areas where the macroclimate is quite consistent across the whole area. And the benefits and problems with this then are important to have a little bit of a talk about. The benefits are that, of course, there is uniformity. So those vines are growing consistently across the whole region at the same time as each other. So therefore, management of the region or the village or the area is going to be rather straightforward and cost effective. But the disadvantage of this is that there's going to be, of course, less diversity. And you're not going to get such a large amount of range of clones, and potentially, therefore, could be a lack in complexity and balance in the wines. It could also make the vineyards more susceptible to disease if a certain disease started to spread through, because the vines are all the same. There's less diversity to protect against that. But of course, the grape grower will have all of this information, hopefully, will thoroughly understand this, maybe with a vineyard consultant, and to plant a number of clones spread out around the land that they have. Maybe you've got flat areas, slopes, different aspects, different waterlogging, pH in the soils, and so on and so on. All of this will be taken into consideration, and also therefore focusing on the amount of diversity that may be used within the vineyard. Okay, so that brings my first part of vine propagation to a close. I hope you've enjoyed it. We will have part 2, which is the final part on vine propagation, and that's available only to members of the Wine with Jimmy e-learning portal. So you can go and type that into your browser and then go and have a look at the wonderful website that has a huge amount of information to help you through your studies and to be successful in your examinations. So if you do have any comments, questions or concerns, once again, please get in touch either via commenting on this video on YouTube or having a look at our social media handles at the bottom of each slide, or by our website, winewithjimmy.com. If you do find yourself in London, come and see me for a class, for a glass or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Thank you so much.